She was supposed to be handed over by morning. The marriage contract had been signed 3 weeks ago. Her father's debts, her family's survival, a lord twice her age who smiled like he owned her before the vows were even spoken. She had no choice. Until tonight. Until she saw the carriage. The Duke's carriage sat in the shadows of the courtyard, black lacquer gleaming under torchlight, the crest of House Kaelmar carved into the door. Everyone knew that crest. Everyone feared it. The Duke of Kaelmar did not attend court. He did not bow to kings. Rumors said he'd killed men for less than a stolen glance, that his enemies disappeared without trial, that even the royal family stepped carefully around his name. She should have run the other way. Instead, she lifted the edge of her cloak, checked the courtyard once more, and climbed inside. The interior smelled of leather and smoke. Dark. Silent. Empty. She pressed herself into the corner, heart hammering, and pulled the cloak tight. The carriage would leave soon. It had to. And when it did, she would be miles away before anyone realized she was gone. The door clicked open. Her breath stopped. A figure stepped inside. Tall. Broad-shouldered. Dressed in black, a silver sigil pinned at his collar. His face was shadowed, but she didn't need to see it to know. The Duke of Kaelmar. He didn't sit. Didn't move. Just stood there, filling the space, his gaze sweeping the interior until it landed on her. Silence stretched. She couldn't breathe. Couldn't speak. Every instinct screamed at her to explain, to beg, to apologize. But his eyes held her frozen. Then, low and deliberate, he spoke. Who sent you? Her throat closed. No one. Liar. I'm not, her voice cracked. I'm not lying. He stepped closer. Not threatening. Worse. Controlled. Like a predator deciding whether to strike or wait. Then why, he said, voice soft and cold. Are you in my carriage? She should have lied. Should have invented a story, a reason, anything that didn't sound like desperation. Instead, the truth spilled out. I had nowhere else to go. His expression didn't change. But something shifted in the air between them. He tilted his head, studying her like she was a puzzle he hadn't expected to find. Nowhere else, he repeated. She nodded. And you chose me. It wasn't a question. It was an accusation. A test. She lifted her chin, even though her hands were shaking. I chose escape. For a long moment he said nothing. Then he sat. Not across from her. Beside her. Close enough that she could feel the heat of him, the weight of his presence pressing against the small space she'd tried to claim. You don't know what you've done, he said. I know, she whispered. I know it was reckless. I know you could. No. His voice cut through hers. You don't. He leaned in, just enough that she could see his face clearly now. Sharp jaw. Dark eyes that didn't blink. A mouth that didn't smile. You climbed into my carriage, he said. You put yourself under my protection, whether you meant to or not. Her pulse spiked. I didn't, and I don't give back what's mine. The words landed like a brand. She stared at him, unable to process what he'd just said. Yours. You wanted escape. His gaze didn't waver. You have it, but it comes with a price. What price? He smiled then. Slow. Dangerous, but you'll see. The carriage lurched forward. She grabbed the edge of the seat, but he didn't move. Didn't flinch. Just watched her with that same unreadable expression as the wheels began to roll, carrying them away from the estate, away from the marriage, away from everything she'd known. Where are we going? She asked. Somewhere no one will take you from me. Her chest tightened. You don't even know who I am. I know enough. You know nothing. He leaned back, utterly calm, utterly certain. I know you're running from something worse than me. I know you're desperate enough to gamble your life on a stranger's mercy. And I know that by morning, every lord in this kingdom will be searching for you. She froze. How do you? Because I make it my business to know. He tilted his head. And now, so do you. The carriage rolled on into the night. She sat in the dark beside the most feared man in the realm and realized with cold, creeping certainty. She hadn't escaped. She'd just traded one cage for another. But this time, the door was locked from the outside. And the man holding the key wasn't letting go. If you're enjoying this story, drop a like and share it with someone who loves dark romance. And comment below, where are you watching from? I'd love to know. Chapter 2. A Woman Under His Protection. The carriage didn't stop until dawn. She tried to stay awake, tried to keep her guard up, but exhaustion had pulled her under some time before midnight. When she woke, sunlight filtered through the curtained windows, and the Duke was watching her. Not staring. Watching. Like he'd been doing it for hours. She sat up quickly, pulling her cloak tighter. Where are we? Kailmar Estate. His voice was flat, matter-of-fact. My home. Her stomach dropped. She'd known they were heading somewhere, but hearing it made it real. Final. I can't stay here. You will. People will notice I'm gone. They'll search. Let them. He stood, unfolding from the seat with a kind of easy grace that came from absolute confidence. By the time they realize where you are, it won't matter. She pushed herself up, legs unsteady. Why won't it matter? He opened the carriage door and cold morning air rushed in. Beyond it, she could see stone walls, iron gates, guards in black and silver uniforms. Everything built to keep the world out. Or keep someone in. Because, he said, turning back to her with that same unreadable expression, you'll already be claimed. The estate was massive. Towers that pierced the sky. Courtyards lined with statues of wolves and ravens. Hallways so long she couldn't see the end of them. A servant, silent, efficient, led her through corridors to a chamber on the eastern wing. The room was larger than her entire family's quarters back home. Four-poster bed. Fireplace already lit. Windows overlooking gardens she couldn't name. The Duke requests your presence at noon, the servant said. A bath has been drawn. Clothing has been provided. She wanted to argue, to demand answers, to ask what claimed actually meant. But the servant was already gone. The bath was hot. Too hot. Like it was trying to burn away the last 3 weeks. The forced smiles, the contract signing. The way her father had looked at her like she was currency. She scrubbed her skin until it hurt. When she finally stepped out, she found the clothing laid across the bed. Not her torn, mud-stained traveling dress. Something new. Deep green silk. High collar. Long sleeves. Elegant, but severe. It fit perfectly. She stared at herself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman looking back. Noon came faster than she wanted. The same servant appeared at her door, gestured for her to follow, and led her through another maze of hallways until they reached a set of tall double doors. The dining hall. Inside, a table stretched the length of the room, but only 2 places were set. One at the head. One to the right. The Duke was already seated. He didn't stand when she entered. Didn't smile. Just gestured to the chair beside him. Seat. She hesitated, then obeyed. A servant poured wine. Another brought food. Roasted meat, bread still warm, fruit she didn't recognize. Enough for 10 people. She didn't touch any of it. You need to eat, he said. I'm not hungry. You haven't eaten since yesterday. How would you know? Because I was there. He cut into his meal with precise, controlled movements. And you didn't eat then either. She clenched her jaw. I wasn't exactly comfortable. You're not comfortable now. No. I'm not. He set down his knife, turned to face her fully. Then let's remedy that. How? Ask me what you want to know. She blinked. Of all the things she'd expected, it wasn't that. What? You're afraid, he said. You don't know what I want. What this is. What happens next. He leaned back in his chair, completely at ease. So ask. Her mind raced. There were 100 questions. 1,000. She picked the most dangerous one. Why did you claim me? His gaze didn't waver. Because you were being hunted. You don't know that. I know exactly that. He reached for his wine, took a slow sip. Gerard Mendoza. That's who you were supposed to marry. Her blood went cold. How? He's 53. Widowed twice. Known for his particular tastes. The Duke's voice was calm, clinical. His last wife died under suspicious circumstances. The one before that fled to a convent. She couldn't breathe. You weren't his first choice, he continued. You were his fourth. The others refused. But your father needed the gold, so he signed. Tears burned behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. You didn't answer my question. I did. He set the glass down. You were being hunted. I stopped it. Why? Because I could. That's not a reason. It's the only one you're getting. She shoved her chair back, standing. Then I'm leaving. He didn't move, didn't react, just watched her with those dark, unreadable eyes. Go ahead. She froze. Walk out that door, he said softly. Take a horse. Ride to the gates. Tell the guards you want to leave. You'll stop me? No. That single word hit harder than any threat. Then what? She whispered. He stood now, slowly, and closed the distance between them. Not touching. Just close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his gaze. Then you'll realize, he said, that the only thing worse than being here is being anywhere else. Her hands were shaking. You're keeping me prisoner. I'm keeping you safe. What's the difference? His mouth curved. Not quite a smile. Something darker. Time. She didn't leave. Not that day. Not the next. She told herself it was strategy. That she needed to understand the estate, find weaknesses, plan an escape. But every time she walked the grounds, guards nodded. Servants bowed. Doors opened before she reached them. And every evening, the Duke summoned her to dinner. They didn't speak much, but he watched her. Always watching. Like he was waiting for something. On the third night, she finally asked, "What do you want from me?" He set down his fork, considering compliance. Her stomach twisted. I won't. Not that kind. His voice was sharp. I'm not Gerard Mendoza. Then what kind? The kind where you stop looking for exits. He stood, moved to the window. The kind where you accept that this is where you are, where you'll stay. And if I don't? He turned, backlit by moonlight, and for the first time, she saw something dangerous flicker across his face. Then I'll make you. The promise hung in the air between them. Not a threat. A certainty. She should have been terrified. But somewhere beneath the fear, something else stirred. Something that wondered if being claimed by a monster was better than being sold to one. She woke to voices outside her door. Not servants. Guards. Orders from the Duke himself. No one enters without his permission. What about the lady? Especially the lady. Her stomach tightened. She crossed to the door, pressed her ear against the wood. Is she a prisoner? A younger voice asked. Silence. Then, she's protected. There's a difference. She pulled back, pulse hammering. Protected. Claimed. Guarded. Different words for the same cage. Breakfast arrived on a silver tray. She didn't touch it. By midday, a servant knocked. The Duke requests your presence in the East Courtyard. She almost refused. Almost stayed in her room out of spite. But curiosity won. The courtyard was unlike anything she'd seen in the estate. No formal gardens. No decorative fountains. Just an open training ground surrounded by high stone walls. And the Duke, stripped to his shirt sleeves, sword in hand. He moved like violence made art. Each strike precise. Controlled. Deadly. A training dummy stood across from him, wood already splintered from previous blows. He didn't stop when she entered. Didn't acknowledge her at all. She stood at the edge, watching, until finally he lowered his blade and turned. You came. You summoned me. I requested. He wiped sweat from his brow. You could have refused. Could I? His mouth curved. No. Despite everything, she almost smiled. He gestured to a bench. Seat. We need to talk. We talk every night at dinner. Not about this. She sat slowly, wary. He remained standing, sword still in hand, like he couldn't quite let go of the weapon even now. Word has reached the capital, he said. About your disappearance. Her chest tightened. And Gerard Mendoza is demanding your return. Your father has declared you kidnapped. The royal court is asking questions. She'd expected this, prepared for it, but hearing it still felt like a punch. What did you tell them? Nothing. He set the sword down on a rack, finally. Yet, what does that mean? He turned to face her fully. It means we have a choice to make. We. You think this only affects you? His voice sharpened. The moment I brought you here, I made a declaration. Every lord in this kingdom knows it. Every political family is watching to see what I'll do next. She stood, anger flaring. I didn't ask you to declare anything. You climbed into my carriage to escape. And you did. He closed the distance between them in 3 strides. But escape has consequences. For both of us. She held her ground, refusing to back down. Then what do you want? I want to make this official. The words landed like stones. Official, she repeated slowly. You mean a claim recognized by law, by court, by crown. His gaze didn't waver. I want to marry you. The world tilted. She actually laughed. A sharp, disbelieving sound. You can't be serious. I'm entirely serious. You don't even know me. I know enough. You've known me 4 days. I've known men for years and trusted them less. He stepped closer, voice dropping. This isn't about courtship. It's about power. Power. Gerard Mendoza has influence. Old money. Political connections. If I simply refuse to return you, it becomes a dispute. A negotiation. His jaw tightened. But if you're my wife, it becomes treason to challenge that claim. Her mind raced, trying to find the trap. And what do I get? Protection. Status. Freedom from a forced marriage to a man who would break you. By entering a forced marriage with you instead. This isn't forced. She stared at him. You just said I don't have a choice. You have a choice. He said it quietly, with absolute certainty. You can refuse. Walk out of here today. I'll give you a hoarse scold, enough to start over somewhere far from Gerard Mendoza and your father. And if I stay, then you become untouchable. The word hung between them, dangerous and tempting. Why? She whispered. Why would you do this for someone you don't know? For a long moment, he didn't answer. Then, because I've spent my entire life watching powerful men take what they want from those who can't fight back. And I'm tired of it. She searched his face for lies, for manipulation, for any sign this was another game. All she found was certainty. You're asking me to trust you, she said. No. I'm asking you to use me. His voice was hard, honest. I don't need your trust. I need your answer. She walked the gardens for hours after that, turned the offer over in her mind from every angle. Marriage to the Duke meant safety, yes. But it also meant permanence. No escape. No second chances. Marriage to Gerard Mendoza meant horror. She knew that now, knew it in her bones. But marriage to a stranger, even one who'd protected her, felt like stepping off a cliff in the dark. As sunset painted the sky crimson, she found herself back in the east courtyard. The Duke was there again, practicing, like he'd been waiting. She watched him for a moment, then spoke. I have conditions. He lowered his sword, turned. Name them. I want my own chambers. My own space. Done. I want freedom to move through the estate. No guards following me everywhere. Agreed, with exceptions for your safety. She lifted her chin. And I want the truth. No secrets. If you're going to claim me, I need to know who you really are. Something flickered in his expression. Respect, maybe. Or surprise. That's fair. Then I have one question before I give you my answer. Ask it. She stepped closer, close enough to see the faint scar along his jaw, the flecks of silver in his dark eyes. If I say yes, she said softly, will you ever let me go? He didn't hesitate, didn't soften it. No. The answer should have terrified her. Instead, it clarified everything. She took a breath, steadied herself, and met his gaze. Then my answer is yes. The Duke didn't smile, didn't celebrate, didn't move. He just nodded once, like a contract had been signed. "We'll make the announcement tomorrow," he said. "The ceremony will follow within the week. I'll handle the political fallout. And Gerard Mendoza? We'll learn that some claims can't be challenged." His voice went cold, dangerous. "No matter how much gold he offers." She should have felt relief. Victory, even. Instead, she felt the weight of chains settling into place. Different chains than before, but chains nonetheless. As she turned to leave, his voice stopped her. "One more thing." She looked back. "When we're married," he said, "you'll have my name, my house, my protection." He stepped closer, and she felt the full weight of his presence. "But understand this, I don't share. What's mine stays mine. No one touches you. No one threatens you. No one takes you from me." She met his gaze, unflinching. "Is that a promise or a warning?" His smile was sharp, deadly. "Both." Chapter 4. A woman under his protection. The announcement went out at dawn. She wasn't there to see it, but she felt it. The shift in the air. The way servants moved differently through the halls. The way guards straightened when she passed. By noon, the entire kingdom knew. The Duke of Calmar was taking a wife. She spent the morning in her chambers, trying to process what she'd agreed to. A servant brought wedding fabrics, silks in deep burgundy, black lace, silver thread. Materials fit for a duchess. Not a runaway bride hiding from a forced marriage. A duchess. The word felt foreign in her mouth. A knock interrupted her thoughts. "Enter." The door opened, and a woman stepped inside. Older, sharp-eyed, dressed in the formal black and silver of the Duke's household. Lady Carmela Reese. The woman introduced herself with a crisp nod. "Head of the Duke's staff. I've been instructed to prepare you for the ceremony." "Prepare me how?" Carmela's gaze swept over her, assessing. "You'll need to understand what it means to be the Duchess of Calmar. The expectations. The protocol. The dangers." "Dangers? Did you think the Duke's enemies would simply accept this?" Carmela moved to the window, looked out over the grounds. "You're about to become the most protected and most targeted woman in the kingdom." A chill ran down her spine. "No one told me that. The Duke doesn't waste words on obvious truths." Carmela turned back. "But I will. You need to understand what you've stepped into." She sat down slowly. "Then tell me." Carmela laid it out with brutal efficiency. The Duke had enemies. Rivals who'd spent years trying to find weakness in his armor. Political families who resented his power. Lords who feared him. And now, Carmela said, they have a target. Me. You. The older woman's expression softened slightly. The Duke knows this. It's why he's already doubled the guards. Why he insists you stay within the estate grounds until after the ceremony. Why he's made it clear that any threat to you is a threat to him. He's using me as bait.
No.
Carmela's voice was sharp. He's using himself as your shield. There's a difference. She wanted to argue, but something in the woman's tone stopped her. You care about him, she said quietly. Carmela's jaw tightened. I've served this house for 30 years. I've watched that man build everything from nothing, and I've never seen him claim anything he didn't intend to keep. The words settled heavy in the room. What does that mean for me? It means, Carmela said, that whether you wanted this or not, you're his now, and he doesn't lose what's his. The Duke summoned her that evening, not to the dining hall,
to his study.
She'd never been there before. The room was all dark wood and leather, walls lined with maps and books, a desk covered in correspondence. A fire burned low in the hearth. He stood at the window, still dressed in black, watching the grounds. Carmela spoke with you, he said without turning. She did. And she told me I'm a target now. She moved closer, studying his profile. That your enemies will come for me. They'll try. You don't sound concerned. I'm not. He finally turned, and his gaze was absolute. They can try all they want. They won't succeed. She crossed her arms. That's arrogant. That's fact. He moved to the desk, poured 2 glasses of wine, offered her one. I've spent 15 years building a reputation that keeps wolves at bay. No one crosses me and lives to brag about it. She took the glass but didn't drink. Is that supposed to comfort me? It's supposed to prepare you. He leaned against the desk, watching her. Tomorrow, we make this official. The ceremony will be private, just witnesses required by law. But the announcement will be public. And then what? And then you become untouchable. His voice lowered. But that protection comes with visibility. People will watch you, judge you, test you to see if you're worthy of the title. Worthy. She laughed bitterly. I'm a runaway bride who hid in a carriage. What makes me worthy of anything? You survived. He said it simply, like it explained everything. You made an impossible choice and you survived it. That's more than most nobles ever do. She met his gaze, searching for mockery. Found none. You really believe that? I don't say things I don't believe. For a moment, they just looked at each other. The fire crackled. Outside, guards changed shifts. I'm afraid, she admitted quietly. Good. She blinked. Good. Fear keeps you sharp. Keeps you careful. He set his glass down. But don't let it paralyze you. You're about to walk into a world that will try to break you.
You need to be stronger than that.
I don't know if I am. You are. He moved closer, and she felt the familiar weight of his presence. You wouldn't have climbed into that carriage if you weren't. The ceremony was scheduled for dawn. She couldn't sleep. Around midnight, she left her chambers, wandered the halls. Guards nodded as she passed, but didn't stop her. True to his word, the Duke had given her freedom to move. She found herself in the East Courtyard again. The training ground where he'd proposed. Where she'd said yes. Can't sleep?
She spun.
The Duke emerged from the shadows, still dressed, like he'd never gone to bed. Neither can you, apparently, she said. I rarely sleep before a battle. This is a wedding, not a battle. His smile was sharp. In this world, they're often the same thing. She huffed a laugh despite herself. That's depressing. That's reality. He moved to stand beside her, both of them looking up at the stars. Are you having second thoughts? She considered lying. Decided against it. Yes. Good. She glanced at him. Why is that good? Because it means you understand what you're doing. He turned to face her. This isn't a fairy tale. I'm not a prince. And tomorrow won't solve all your problems. Then why are we doing this? Because it solves the ones that matter. His gaze held hers. Gerard Mendoza, your father. Anyone who thinks they can claim you against your will. By letting you claim me instead. Yes. He didn't flinch from it. But I gave you a choice. They never would have. She wanted to argue. Wanted to find the flaw in his logic. But she couldn't. What happens after tomorrow? She asked. We consolidate power. We face whatever comes. We survive. He paused. Together. The word settled between them.
Together. Partnership. Alliance.
Maybe not love. Not yet. Maybe never. But something. I'm still afraid, she whispered. I know. His voice softened, just slightly. But you won't face it alone. Dawn came too fast. She dressed in burgundy silk and black lace. Carmela helped with her hair, weaving silver through the dark strands. You look every inch a duchess, the older woman said. She looked at herself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. The ceremony was held in the estate's private chapel. Small. Intimate. Only the required witnesses, Carmela, the head guard Stephen Hardwick, and a priest who spoke the words with quiet reverence. The Duke stood at the altar in black, silver sigil at his throat, looking every inch the dangerous man he was. When she walked down the aisle, his expression didn't change. But his eyes followed her every step. The vows were traditional, simple, binding. Do you take this woman?
Ido.
Do you take this man? She looked at him, really looked, at the man who'd claimed her, protected her, offered her a different kind of cage.
Ido.
The priest smiled. Then by the power vested in me, I pronounce you husband and wife. The Duke stepped forward. And for one terrible, breathless moment, she thought he might kiss her. Instead, he took her hand, raised it to his lips, pressed a kiss to her knuckles that felt like a brand. "Mine," he murmured, so quietly only she could hear. Not a question. A fact. Chapter 5. Enemies at Court. The first threat arrived 3 days after the wedding. Not with swords or soldiers. With an invitation. She found it on the breakfast table, black wax seal already broken. The Duke sat across from her, reading the same letter with an expression carved from stone. "What is it?" she asked. He slid the parchment across to her. "The royal court requests the honor of the Duke and Duchess of Kaelmar's presence at the season's opening ball. His Majesty insists." Her stomach tightened. Insists. Meaning refusal would be an insult. The Duke's jaw clenched. And an opening for his enemies to question our union. His enemies or yours? In this case, they're the same people. She set the invitation down carefully. "Then we go."
No.
"You just said refusal would be an insult. I said it would be an opening. That's different from forcing you into a den of vipers before you're ready." She met his gaze evenly. "I agreed to be your wife. That means I face what you face." Something flickered in his expression. Approval, maybe. Or concern. "You don't know what you're asking." "Then teach me." The next week was brutal. Carmela drilled her on court protocol until she could recite the hierarchy of noble houses in her sleep. Which families allied with whom? Which lords held grudges? Which ladies smiled with knives behind their backs? "The Duchess of Westmore will test you immediately," Carmela warned. She's been trying to position her daughter for a match with the Duke for years. I thought he never attended court. He didn't, which made him more desirable. Carmela's expression was grim. Now that he has a wife, she'll want to know what you have that her daughter doesn't. And what do I tell her? Nothing. You smile. You deflect. You never let them see weakness. She practiced that smile until her face hurt. The Duke worked with her too, though his lessons were different. He taught her to read a room, to identify threats before they materialized, to understand that in court, every conversation was a negotiation and every compliment hit a test. "They'll try to separate us," he said one evening in his study. "It's standard strategy. Get you alone, ask questions, probe for cracks in the marriage." "What kind of questions?" "Whether you're happy, whether the marriage was your choice, whether I'm treating you well." His gaze was steady. "Whether you can be turned against me." Her throat tightened. "And if they ask, you tell them the truth." "Which truth?" "That you chose this. That you're protected. That anyone who threatens you threatens me." He leaned forward. "And that I don't make threats I won't follow through on." She studied him in the firelight. "You're not worried I'll say the wrong thing?"
No.
"Why not?" "Because you're smarter than they expect. And you have something they don't." "What's that?" His smile was dangerous. Nothing to lose. The night of the ball, she dressed in midnight blue silk, silver embroidery at the collar and cuffs. Carmela wove diamonds through her hair, real ones, family heirlooms the Duke had given her without ceremony. When she descended the stairs, the Duke was waiting. He traded his usual black for formal court attire, still dark, but with the full regalia of his house. Silver wolf clasps, the ducal chain, every inch the most powerful man in the kingdom. His gaze swept over her once, slow and assessing. "You look like a duchess," he said. "Is that a compliment?" "It's a fact." He offered his arm. "Ready." She took it, felt the solid strength beneath the fabric.
No. Good.
"That means you're paying attention." The royal palace blazed with light. Carriages lined the circular drive, nobles and jewels and silk flooding through the main entrance. Music drifted from the ballroom, elegant and false. The moment they stepped inside, conversation dimmed. Every eye turned. She felt the weight of 100 stares, assessing, judging, calculating. The Duke's grip on her arm tightened slightly, not restraining, but anchoring. "Ignore them," he murmured. "They're looking for fear." She lifted her chin and smiled. The introductions were a gauntlet. Lord Bernard Macdonald, who'd lost a trade dispute to the Duke years ago and still held the grudge. Lady Sandra Hastings, whose husband had disappeared under mysterious circumstances the Duke was rumored to know about. Richard Lam, a minor lord who owed the Duke favors and clearly resented it. Each one smiled. Each one tested. Such a whirlwind romance. Lady Hastings purred. How fortunate you found each other. Fortuitous timing, the Duchess replied evenly. Indeed. Especially given your previous engagement. The room seemed to hold its breath. She felt the Duke tense beside her, but his expression remained neutral. Previous arrangements, she said calmly, are exactly that. Previous. Lady Hastings's smile sharpened. Of course. Though I hear Lord Mendoza was quite distressed by the change. Lord Mendoza's distress is not my concern. How cold. One might wonder if you're capable of warmer feelings at all. The insult was veiled, but clear. Before she could respond, the Duke stepped forward. One might wonder, he said softly, dangerously, why Lady Hastings concerns herself with my wife's feelings instead of her own husband's whereabouts. The color drained from the woman's face. Your Grace, I didn't mean. You did. His voice was ice. And now we're done here. He steered her away, leaving Lady Hastings standing frozen in social ruin. You didn't have to do that, she whispered. Yes, he said. I did. The real threat came an hour later. She was standing near the refreshment table when a man approached. Older, well-dressed, with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Duchess Kaelmar. What a pleasure to finally meet you. Something in his tone set off alarms. I don't believe we've been introduced. Charles Kirkland. I'm an old friend of your father's. Her blood went cold. I don't have anything to say to friends of my father. Pity. He's quite worried about you. Kirkland stepped closer, voice dropping. Worried enough to offer substantial rewards for information about your well-being. I'm perfectly well. Are you? His gaze swept over her. Married to a man known for his brutality. Isolated in his estate. One wonders if you came here of your own free will. She forced herself to stay calm. I'm exactly where I choose to be. Under duress, perhaps. If you needed help. She doesn't. The Duke materialized beside her, and the temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Kirkland stepped back. Your Grace. You were simply leaving. The Duke's voice was soft, lethal. And you'll tell whoever sent you that my wife is under my protection. Any attempt to question that will be considered an act of war. No one sent me. I was merely concerned. Leave. Now. Kirkland fled. The Duke turned to her, and his expression softened fractionally. Are you all right? He knew my father. I know. That's why I was watching. You were watching the whole time? I never stopped watching. His hand found hers, a brief squeeze. I told you. You're mine to protect. They left the ball an hour later. In the carriage, she finally let herself breathe. That was a test, she said. Yes. Did I pass? He looked at her in the darkness. You stood your ground. You didn't break. You didn't give them anything they could use. A pause. Yes. You passed. She leaned back against the seat, exhausted. How often will it be like that? Until they learn you can't be broken. His voice was certain. And then they'll stop trying. And if they don't, his smile was sharp in the shadows. Then I'll make them. That night, she understood something fundamental. The Duke wasn't just protecting her from external threats. He was preparing her to become one herself. And slowly, dangerously, she was beginning to like it. Chapter 6. The Cost of Being Claimed. The threats started small. A letter slipped under her door.
No signature.
Just 3 words. He can't protect you. She burned it before the Duke could see. 2 days later, a servant found a dead raven on the east courtyard steps. Its neck broken. A black ribbon tied around its feet. Carmela's face went pale when she saw it. What does it mean? The Duchess asked. It's a message. The older woman's voice was tight. From the old families. A warning. Warning of what? Carmela met her gaze. That they're coming for you. She told the Duke that evening. He listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker with every word. When she finished, he stood and walked to the window, hands clasped behind his back. I knew this would happen, he said quietly. Then why didn't you warn me? Because I hoped I was wrong. He turned to face her. The old families don't like change. They especially don't like me. And now that you're my wife, you represent everything they fear. Which is what? That I'm building something they can't control. His jaw tightened. That I'm consolidating power. That I have something to lose. The words hit her like a punch.
Me.
I'm what you have to lose. Yes. At least he didn't lie about it. So, what do? We prepare. He moved to his desk, pulled out a map. The estates surrounding mine. 3 belong to families who've challenged me before. If they're coordinating, you think they're working together? I know they are. He pointed to markers on the map.
Sandra Robbins.
Michelle Torez. Mildred McNelly. All old blood. All resentful of my rise. All with reasons to want me weakened. She studied the names, committing them to memory. What do they want?
You.
Gone.
His voice was flat.
Either return to your father, or dead, or disgraced enough that the marriage becomes invalid. Her throat tightened. Can they do that? They can try. He looked at her directly. Which is why you need to understand something. This isn't court games anymore. This is war. I thought we were already at war. That was politics. His expression hardened. This is survival. The next attack came 3 nights later. She was in the library, reading by candlelight, when she heard glass shatter. Her window exploded inward. She dove behind a chair as something metal clattered across the floor. Not a weapon. A message cylinder. She grabbed it with shaking hands, unrolled the parchment inside. Leave Kaelmar or die in it. You have 1 week. Footsteps pounded in the hallway. The door burst open. The Duke took in the scene instantly. Broken window, her crouched behind furniture, the message in her hand. His face went cold. Guards. His voice cracked like thunder. Lock down. Now. Within minutes, the estate erupted into controlled chaos. Guards sweeping the grounds. Servants securing windows. Stephen Hardwick barking orders. The Duke crossed to her, pulled her to her feet. His hands gripped her shoulders, eyes scanning her for injuries. Are you hurt?
No. I've fine.
You're not fine. You're shaking.
She was.
She hadn't realized. He took the message from her hands, read it, and his expression went murderous. 1 week, he said softly. Dangerously. They think they can give you a deadline. Maybe I should.
No.
The word was absolute. You're not leaving. You're not running. You're not giving them what they want. They'll kill me. They'll try. He pulled her closer, and his voice dropped. And they'll fail. Because I will burn this kingdom to ash before I let anyone take you from me. The intensity in his eyes stole her breath. Why? The question came out as a whisper. Why does it matter so much? For a long moment, he didn't answer. Then, because you're mine. And I don't lose what's mine. Sleep didn't come that night. She paced her chambers until dawn, replaying the threat, the broken glass, the cold certainty in the Duke's voice. Around sunrise, there was a knock. Carmela entered, carrying a wooden box. The Duke asked me to give you this. She opened it carefully. Inside, a dagger. Small, perfectly balanced, with a silver handle engraved with a Kaelmar crest. He's teaching you to fight? She asked. He's teaching you to survive. Carmela's expression was grave. The threats won't stop. You need to be ready. She lifted the blade, tested its weight. I've never held a weapon before. Then it's time you learned. The lesson started that afternoon. Not with the Duke. With Stephen Hardwick, the head guard. A man built like a wall, with scars that told stories she didn't want to know. First rule, he said, circling her in the training courtyard. Your size is a disadvantage. Never try to overpower an opponent. Then what do? You're faster. Smarter. You use that. He demonstrated a strike. Quick, precise, aimed at vulnerable points. Throat.
Eyes. Joints.
You're not trying to win a duel. You're trying to create an opening to escape. She mimicked the movement. Clumsy at first. Again. She tried.
Failed.
Again. Over and over until her arms burned and sweat dripped down her spine. Better, Hardwick finally said. But you're still hesitating. When the moment comes, you can't think. You act. What if I can't? Then you die. He said it without malice. Just fact. So, you learn not to hesitate. The Duke watched from the shadows. She felt his presence before she saw him, that familiar weight in the air. When Hardwick dismissed her, the Duke stepped forward. You're doing well, he said.
I'm exhausted.
Good. Exhaustion means you're pushing past your limits. He gestured to the bench.
Seat.
We need to talk. She collapsed onto the stone, grateful for the rest. He sat beside her, close but not touching. I had Stephen trace the message cylinder, he said. It came from Robbins' estate.
Sandra Robbins.
One of the old families you mentioned. Yes. His jaw clenched. He's made his move, which means the others will follow. What are you going to do? What I should have done years ago. He turned to face her. I'm calling in debts. Forcing alliances. Making it clear that an attack on you is an attack on me, and that attacking me is suicide. That sounds like escalation. It is. His voice was hard. But they escalated first when they threatened you. Now they'll learn why people fear the name Kael'mar. She studied his profile, the sharp line of his jaw, the controlled fury in his eyes. You'd go to war for me, she said quietly. Someone you barely know. I'd go to war for what's mine. He met her gaze. And you are mine, whether you fully understand what that means or not. I'm starting to. Are you? He leaned closer, and she felt the intensity radiating off him. Because being claimed by me doesn't just mean protection. It means becoming part of something larger.
Darker.
More dangerous than anything you've known. I know that. Do you? His hand caught her chin, forcing her to hold his gaze. Because there's no going back from this. Once we cross this line, once I unleash what I'm capable of to protect you, there's no pretending this is a simple marriage of convenience. Her heart pounded. Then what is it? His smile was sharp, possessive, dangerous. Possession. Pure and absolute. That night, another message arrived. But this time, it wasn't for her. It was from the Duke, sent to every old family in the kingdom. She read it over his shoulder in his study. The Duchess of Kael'mar is under my protection. Any threat to her is an act of war against House Kael'mar. Choose your next move carefully. That's a declaration, she whispered. Yes. They'll retaliate. I'm counting on it. His voice was cold, certain. Let them come. Let them try. They'll learn what happens when you threaten what belongs to me. She looked at him, really looked, and understood. This wasn't about politics anymore. This wasn't even about protection. This was about ownership. Territory. A line drawn in blood. And she was standing on his side of it. Chapter 7. The threat returns. The retaliation came faster than expected. She woke to shouting. Bells ringing. The clash of steel on steel. She grabbed the dagger from her nightstand, always within reach now, and ran to the window. The estate was under attack. Not a full assault. Something worse. Surgical. Precise. A strike team breaching the eastern gate, moving with military efficiency toward the main house. Toward her chambers. Her door burst open. Stephen Hardwick, armor splattered with blood. Duchess. We need to move.
Now.
What's happening? Robbins sent mercenaries. Professional killers. He grabbed her arm, pulled her into the hallway. The Duke is holding the courtyard, but they're trying to flank. You're the target. Her blood ran cold. Where are we going? Safe room. Duke's orders. They ran through corridors she barely recognized, Hardwick leading with his sword drawn. Behind them, she could hear footsteps.
Shouts.
The sounds of men dying. They turned a corner and came face to face with two mercenaries. Hardwick moved like lightning. One swing, a spray of blood, and the first man dropped. The second lunged. Run! Hardwick roared. She ran. Behind her, steel rang against steel. A scream. Silence. She didn't look back. The safe room was hidden behind a false wall in the Duke's study. Hardwick had shown her once, made her memorize the path. She slammed her hand against the panel. It swung open. Inside, a small chamber.
No windows. Reinforced door.
Supplies for siege. She stumbled inside, gasping for breath, and the panels sealed behind her.
Darkness.
Silence. Then footsteps above. Voices. Search every room. She's here somewhere. Her hand tightened on the dagger. Time crawled. She couldn't tell if minutes or hours passed. The sounds of fighting seemed distant, muffled through stone walls. Then a mechanism clicked. The panel began to open. She pressed herself against the wall, dagger raised, heart hammering. A figure stepped inside. The Duke. Blood on his hands, his shirt, his face, but moving with that same deadly calm. His eyes found her in the darkness, and something in his expression cracked. You're safe, he breathed. She lowered the dagger. Are they?
Dead.
All of them. He crossed to her in 2 strides, hands framing her face, checking for injuries. Did they touch you?
No.
Hardwick got me here before. Her voice broke. Is he alive? He'll live. Took a blade to the shoulder, but he'll live. His thumb brushed her cheek, and his touch was surprisingly gentle. You did well. You remembered the path. You didn't panic. I panicked, she admitted, but you kept moving. His gaze held hers. That's what matters. The aftermath was brutal. 12 mercenaries dead. 3 guards wounded. The eastern gate destroyed. And in the courtyard, arranged in a grim display, the bodies of the attackers, a message pinned to the lead mercenary's chest. She read it over the Duke's shoulder. This is what happens to those who threaten what's mine. You're making an example, she said quietly. I'm making a statement. His voice was cold. Robbins sent killers to my home. To your chambers. He escalated to assassination. So you escalate back.
No.
He turned to face her. I end it. Something in his tone made her stomach twist. What does that mean? It means I'm done playing defense. His eyes were hard, certain. It means I'm taking the fight to them. You're going after Robbins. I'm going after all of them. Robbins. Torez. McNelly. Every old family that thought they could threaten you and live to speak of it. He stepped closer. They wanted a war. Now, they have won. You'll start a civil war. I'll end an insurgency. His voice was absolute. They've been undermining me for years, testing boundaries, waiting for weakness. Now they think they've found it in you. So this is my fault. This is their mistake. His hand caught her chin. And they'll pay for it. That night, he called a war council. She wasn't supposed to attend. But she walked into the strategy room anyway, chin high, and no one stopped her. The Duke glanced up from the maps spread across the table. His advisors, military commanders, intelligence operatives, people whose names she didn't know, fell silent. You should be resting, he said. I should be here. She moved to the table. They came for me. I deserve to know what happens next. He studied her for a long moment, then nodded. Tell her, he said to his commanders. An older man, grizzled, scarred, pointed to the map. Robbins' estate is here. Fortified, but not impregnable. We hit him at dawn with overwhelming force. What about Torez and McNelly? She asked. Simultaneous strikes. Another commander traced routes. We take all 3 estates within hours of each other. Coordination is key. You're attacking noble houses, she said slowly. The crown will respond. Let them. The Duke's voice was flat. I have enough dirt on enough counselors to make the king think twice about intervention. And if he doesn't, he shrugged. I'll deal with that too. She stared at him. You'd go against the crown. I'd go against anyone. His gaze locked on hers. For you. The words landed like a physical blow. She found him alone later, in his private chambers. He was cleaning his sword. Methodical.
Practiced.
Blood still under his fingernails. You killed people tonight, she said. Yes. Doesn't it bother you? They came to kill you. He set the cloth aside, met her gaze.
No.
It doesn't bother me. She should have been horrified. Should have seen a monster. Instead, she saw a man who'd turned himself into a weapon to protect what he claimed. I don't know if I can live with this, she whispered. With what? Being the reason for war. For death. For all of this. He stood, crossed to her. You're not the reason. They are. They chose to threaten you. To test me. To push until something broke. And what broke? My patience. His voice was soft, dangerous. I've spent years building power through restraint, through reputation, through fear. He stepped closer. But you've changed that calculation.
How?
Because now I have something worth breaking my own rules for. Her breath caught. Me. You. His hand brushed her cheek. I warned you what being claimed by me meant. That it would be possession. Absolute. Consuming. I remember. Then you understand. His gaze held hers. I will burn this kingdom down before I let anyone take you. I will start wars. End dynasties. Destroy anyone who threatens what's mine. She should have run. Should have been terrified. Instead, she leaned into his touch. I'm not afraid of you, she said. You should be. I know. She looked up at him. But I'm not. Something shifted in his expression.
Surprise.
Relief. Something darker. Then you're either braver or more foolish than I thought. Maybe both. His smile was dangerous, possessive, and something else. Something almost tender. Probably both. That night, she lay awake thinking about what she'd become. Not the terrified woman who'd hidden in a carriage weeks ago. Not the desperate bride fleeing a forced marriage. Something new. Something harder. The Duchess of Kaelmar. A woman worth starting wars for. And somewhere in the darkness, she realized she wasn't sure if that terrified or thrilled her anymore. Maybe it was both. Dawn came with blood on the horizon. The Duke's forces mobilized before sunrise. 3 strike teams. 3 targets. Coordinated assault. She stood in the war room with Carmela and Stephen Hardwick, bandaged but standing, watching as reports filtered in. Robbins' estate breached. Minimal resistance. Torez surrendered. Her forces stood down. McNelly's guards scattered. The lady herself is in custody. It was over in 3 hours. The old families that had threatened her were broken. Their power shattered. Their leaders imprisoned or fled. And the Duke stood at the center of it all, unmoved, victorious. When he returned, still in armor, still carrying the weight of command, she met him in the courtyard. It's done, he said. I know. They won't threaten you again. She looked at him. This man who'd claimed her, protected her, waged war for her. What have you made me? She asked quietly. His answer was immediate.
Meaning.
Chapter 8. Choosing Power. The summons came from the king himself. Not a request. A command. The Duke and Duchess of Kaelmar will present themselves before the throne within 3 days to answer for recent actions. She read the parchment twice, stomach sinking. They're calling you to account, she said. The Duke stood at the window, watching the dawn. They're calling us both. For attacking noble houses. For winning.
His voice was calm. Too calm.
The crown doesn't care about justice. They care about power. And right now, I have too much of it. She moved beside him. What will they do? Demand explanations.
Levi fines.
Make a show of authority. He turned to face her. And they'll try to use you against me. Her chest tightened.
How?
By questioning the validity of our marriage. By suggesting you were coerced. By offering you a way out. His gaze was steady. They'll give you a choice. What choice? Annulment. Protection under the crown. Freedom from me. His jaw clenched. And I can't stop them from making the offer. The words hung heavy in the air. "You think I'll take it," she said quietly. "I think you'd be smart to consider it." His voice was hard, honest. "I've made you a target. Started a war. Killed for you. You didn't ask for any of this." "You're right. I didn't." She stepped closer. "But I'm still here. For now." "What does that mean?" "It means when we stand before that throne, you'll have a choice to make." His hand caught hers, and his grip was almost desperate. "And whatever you choose, I'll accept it." She searched his face. "Even if I leave?" "Even then." His voice cracked slightly. "I claimed you, protected you, made you mine, but I won't cage you if you want to fly." For the first time since she'd met him, she saw vulnerability in his eyes. And she understood. He'd wage wars for her, kill for her, destroy kingdoms for her, but he wouldn't force her to stay. The journey to the capital took 2 days. They traveled with an armed escort, 30 guards in full armor, a statement of power as much as protection. She rode in the carriage with Carmela, who'd insisted on accompanying them. "You know what they'll offer you," the older woman said. "I know, and I haven't decided." She looked out the window at the passing landscape. "A month ago, I would have done anything to escape a forced marriage. And now you're in one. Am I?" She turned to Carmela. "The Duke gave me a choice. He's giving me another one now. That doesn't make the marriage any less real." Carmela's expression was serious. "Or the consequences any less permanent." "I know. Then what will you do?" She didn't have an answer. The throne room was exactly as imposing as she'd imagined. Vaulted ceilings, marble columns, the king seated on a raised dais, crown glinting in the light streaming through stained glass windows. Nobles lined both sides of the hall, silent, watching, judging. She walked beside the Duke, head high, refusing to show fear. They stopped before the throne, bowed. The king, older, shrewd, with eyes that missed nothing, studied them both. "Duke Kaelmar, you stand accused of unprovoked attacks on 3 noble houses, of exceeding your authority, of threatening the stability of this realm." His voice echoed through the chamber. "How do you answer?" "Not unprovoked." The Duke's voice was clear, unwavering. "They attacked my estate. Sent assassins to kill my wife. I responded in kind. You responded with overwhelming force. You shattered 3 houses in a single morning. I eliminated threats to what's mine." The king's gaze shifted to her. "And you, Duchess, do you corroborate this account?"
Her throat was dry.
Every eye in the room fixed on her. "I do, Your Majesty." "The mercenaries. The assassination attempt. You witnessed these events." "I survived them, Your Majesty." Murmurs rippled through the hall. The king raised a hand for silence. "Then perhaps you can explain something that troubles this court." He leaned forward. "How did you come to marry the Duke? We have reports suggesting irregularities." There it was. The trap. "I married him by choice," she said clearly. "Choice." The king's tone was skeptical. "You were engaged to Lord Gerard Mendoza. Contracted.
Promised.
And yet you fled that arrangement to marry a man you'd just met. I fled a forced marriage to choose my own path. And you chose this?" He gestured to the Duke. A man known for his ruthlessness, his violence, his isolation. She felt the Duke tense beside her, but he didn't speak. This was her moment, her choice. "Yes," she said, "I chose this. Under duress, perhaps, under threat." The king's voice softened, and she realized this was the offer. "The crown recognizes that you may have felt you had no other option. We can provide you with protection, annul this marriage, give you the freedom that was stolen." "Nothing was stolen from me." The words rang out clear and strong. The king paused. "Duchess, Gerard Mendoza would have broken me. My father sold me like property. The lords and ladies in this room stood by and let it happen because it was convenient." She stepped forward, and the Duke let her. "The Duke gave me a choice. He protected me when no one else would. He made me his equal, not his possession. You defend him. I defend myself. Her voice hardened. And if defending myself means standing beside the most dangerous man in this kingdom, then that's what I choose. Silence. The king studied her for a long moment. You understand what you're saying. That you accept responsibility for his actions. That you claim partnership in his choices. I understand perfectly. She lifted her chin. And my answer stands. The king sat back, his expression unreadable. Very well. He looked to the Duke. The crown acknowledges the validity of your marriage. But hear this. The attacks on noble houses cannot go unanswered. You will pay reparations. You will cede certain trade rights. And you will agree to peace terms with the surviving families. Agreed, the Duke said immediately. Furthermore, the king's gaze sharpened. Your wife will serve as liaison between your house and the crown. She will report directly to me on matters of stability and peace. She blinked. That wasn't what she'd expected. Your Majesty, the Duke began. This is not negotiable. The king's voice was firm. If the Duchess chooses to stand beside you, then she will be our assurance that your power is tempered by reason. She looked at the Duke, saw the calculation in his eyes. Then he nodded. I accept these terms. The king stood. Then this matter is concluded. The Duke and Duchess of Caelmar may leave with the crown's blessing. They didn't speak until they were back in the carriage, moving through the capital streets. Then the Duke turned to her. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did. I gave you an escape. The king offered you freedom. And I chose you. She met his gaze steadily. Not because I had to, because I wanted to. Something shifted in his expression. Wonder. Disbelief. Something fierce and possessive and almost reverent. Why?
His voice was raw.
Because somewhere between being claimed and being protected, I realized something. She took his hand. You made me dangerous. You made me powerful. You made me someone who could stand in a throne room and choose her own fate. I only protected you. You did more than that. She squeezed his hand. You gave me teeth. His smile was slow, dark, proud. You already had them. I just helped you learn to bite. That night, back at the estate, they stood together on the balcony overlooking the grounds. The king made you his spy, the Duke said. The king made me powerful. She looked up at him. I'm not just your wife anymore. I'm a political player. Someone who can navigate both your world and theirs. You're not afraid of that? Terrified. She smiled. But I'm done running from fear. He pulled her closer, and his voice was low, possessive, certain.
Then stay.
Not because you have to. Because you want to. I already chose, she said. In front of the entire court. In front of the king. I chose you. And I choose you. His hand cupped her face. Always. Forever. Until this kingdom burns, or I do. She leaned into him, and for the first time since climbing into that carriage, she felt something like peace. Not safety. Not freedom. Something better. Power. Chapter 9. Claimed, but not owned. 6 months passed. The estate changed. She changed it. What had been a fortress became something more. Still protected, still powerful, but with open courtyards where people gathered. With councils where voices were heard. With alliances built on respect instead of fear. The Duke watched her work with something like wonder. You're reshaping my world, he said one evening. Our world, she corrected. And I'm not reshaping it. I'm revealing what it could be. The old families never threatened again. Some fled. Some bent the knee. Some learned to respect the woman who'd chosen power over safety. Sean Robbins died in exile. Michelle Torez surrendered her lands. Mildred McNelly sent a letter of apology and a gift, a peace offering the Duchess accepted with grace. Gerard Mendoza disappeared entirely. Rumor said he'd fled across the sea. The Duchess didn't ask, didn't care. That part of her life was ash. Her role as liaison to the crown became real power. She negotiated treaties, mediated disputes, walked the line between the Duke's ruthlessness and the King's politics with a precision that impressed even Carmela. "You've become what they feared," the older woman said one morning. "What's that?" "Someone who can't be controlled." Carmela smiled. "By anyone." The Duchess looked out over the estate, at the life she'd built from desperation and choice. "Good," she said. The Duke found her in the library that evening. She was reading reports, candlelight casting shadows across her face. She'd changed from the terrified woman who'd hidden in his carriage. Harder, sharper, more certain, but still her. "You're working late," he said. "So are you." She didn't look up. "What do you need?" "I don't need anything." He moved closer. "I wanted to see you." That made her pause. "Look up." "Why?" "Because I can." His voice was soft. "Because you're here. Because you chose to be." She set down her papers. "Having regrets about giving me freedom?" "Never." He sat across from her. "But I am curious about something." "What?" "Are you happy?" The question surprised her. In 6 months, he'd never asked. She considered it. Really considered it. "I don't know if happy is the right word," she said slowly. "But I'm alive. I'm powerful. I'm choosing my own path." She met his gaze. "Is that the same thing?" "I don't know." His honesty was disarming. "I've never had the luxury of asking that question. And now I have you." He leaned forward. "And that's as close to happiness as I've ever come." The words landed soft and dangerous between them. "You claimed me," she said. "But I claimed you too, didn't I?" His smile was slow, dark, genuine. Completely. That night, they stood together in the east courtyard where everything had started. Where he'd proposed. Where she'd said yes. Where she'd chosen power over safety. "Do you remember what you said to me here?" she asked. "I said many things. You said I'd become untouchable. You have."
"No."
She turned to face him. "We have. Together." He pulled her close, and his voice was low, possessive, but edged with something softer. "I told you once that I don't share. That what's mine stays mine." "I remember." "I was wrong." His hand cupped her face. "You're not mine. You're with me. There's a difference." Her breath caught. "When did you realize that?" "When you stood in that throne room and chose me. Not because I claimed you, but because you wanted to." His thumb brushed her cheek. "That's not ownership. That's partnership. You're going soft, Duke Kalmar. Only for you." His smile was dangerous. "Everyone else still gets the monster." "Good." She kissed him, fierce and claiming. "I like the monster." Epilogue. 1 year later. The ballroom glittered with light and power. The Duchess of Kalmar stood at the edge of the gathering, watching nobles who once threatened her now bow when she passed. Watching enemies who'd tried to kill her now seek her favor. Beside her, the Duke was a silent, deadly presence. Still dangerous. Still ruthless when needed. But his hand found hers, and the gesture was unconscious. Natural. "They fear you now," he murmured. "They fear us." Is that enough? She thought about the woman who'd hidden in a carriage, terrified and desperate. Thought about the bride who'd chosen danger over certainty. Thought about the Duchess who'd stood before a king and claimed her own power. "It's a start," she said. Across the room, she saw familiar faces. Carmela, managing the household with iron efficiency. Stephen Hardwick, healed and back to training guards. New alliances being forged. New power structures forming. And at the center of it all, her. Not claimed. Not owned. Choosing. Gerard Mendoza's name became a cautionary tale. The old families learned to respect the new order. The king sought her counsel more often than the dukes, recognizing that power came in many forms. And the Duke and Duchess of Kalmar became legend. Not as conqueror and prize. As partners. Equals. Two people who'd found power in each other and refused to let it go. Late that night, after the ball ended and the guests departed, they returned to their chambers. She stood at the window, looking out over the estate. Their estate. The world they'd built together from threat and choice and blood. Do you ever regret it? The Duke asked. Climbing into your carriage? All of it. The danger. The war. The price you paid. She turned to him, this man who'd claimed her and freed her and made her dangerous. Never, she said. You gave me a choice when no one else would. You protected me when I was powerless. You made me powerful when I was nothing. You were never nothing. I was to everyone else. She moved to him, but not to you. He pulled her close, and his voice was rough with emotion. You were everything the moment you chose me over safety. And you were everything when you let me choose. They stood together in the darkness, two people who'd found power in each other. Not through ownership, through choice, through partnership, through claiming and being claimed in equal measure. Somewhere in the kingdom, a young woman faced an impossible choice. A forced marriage, a desperate situation, no way out. And she heard a story about a duchess who'd hidden in a carriage, who'd chosen danger over certainty, who'd become powerful by claiming her own fate. The young woman looked at the carriage before her and made a choice. She climbed inside. The Duke of Caelmar found his wife in the courtyard the next morning. There's a girl hiding in one of our supply carriages, he said. The Duchess looked up, a slow smile spreading across her face. Is there? She's terrified. Running from something. Seeking protection. And what did you tell her? His smile matched hers.
Dark.
Knowing. Dangerous. I told her to wait. That the Duchess would want to meet her. She stood, brushed off her hands, and moved toward the stables. Then I'd better not keep her waiting. He watched her go, this woman who'd transformed from desperate runaway to powerful duchess, who'd turned his fortress into something stronger than stone, who'd claimed him as thoroughly as he'd claimed her. And he understood, finally, what she'd taught him. Power wasn't about ownership. It was about choice. And they'd chosen each other. Again and again. Forever. The end. Thank you for following the story of the Duchess of Caelmar, a woman who hid in a carriage and found her power. If you enjoyed this journey, please share it with someone who loves dark romance. Comment below where you're listening from and let us know. Would you have climbed into that carriage?